same problem as usual. I don't know what to play. Nah, I want to play something iconic, something classic, something from my childhood. I guess we'll just have to go with an old classic. Oh, god damn, man, what the hell happened? Well, that's not good.
Chosen for you, I have.
What the? What is going on? What hit me?
Play it now. You have to.
I must have hit my head way harder than I thought. There's no way I'm playing this crap, though.
Play it, you must. Depends on it. The world does.
Why, Funko Pop Yoda? I don't even like this game.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one.
Now I know I must be going crazy. That's not even from your franchise. Okay, I'll play! I'll play! So this game was kind of the bane of my existence for a while. I remember playing it as a kid, but the details were really fuzzy. So a few years back, I decided to actually play it on my channel, and that's when I realized that my childhood brain had been trying to push away all the negative memories. I was coerced into trying to 100% this game, and then the game itself actually corrupted my memory cards right at the end, and I was never able to actually do it. So as you can tell, this is gonna be a good time. And the worst part is, since the game corrupted my memory cards, I got nothing. I can't even save. I have to do this in one go without dying. Yay! So what happened with this game? Why is it so bad? Why do I kind of remember it fondly from being a kid, but then going back and playing it now literally gives me nightmares? What happened to make this such a bad experience? Well, to understand that, you gotta understand basically what this game is, how it plays, and what we were expecting when it was announced. The Quest 64 is an RPG, and it's actually the first RPG that we ever got on the N64. Several years later, we'd be graced with the likes of Paper Mario 64, which is a wonderful game, but back in 1998, this is all you had. The game starts with some images on the screen and a bunch of scrolling text, a pretty underwhelming opening cutscene. It gets deep into the lore, but all you really have to know is there's something called the Altel book, and it's never fully explained what it is and what it can do, except that, you know, if it falls into the wrong hands, the entire world might be destroyed. This thing was stored at the monastery where Brian lives, but recently it's gone missing. Your dad took off a month ago to go looking for it, but he hasn't returned, so the obvious choice is to send his 8-year-old son after him, right? Right off the bat here, there's a lot of things that aren't great about this opening. First off, this head monk guy just unloads a crap ton of exposition through his dialogue. As well, you get to hear the very iconic music of the game playing in the background. Most of the music in this game is just kind of like cheap synthesizers with like very basic melodies. There are a few tracks here and there that I do enjoy, but generally speaking, they're all kind of mediocre, and this opening one is one of the worst. Before we jump headfirst into the plot here, there's some stuff to acknowledge about the game itself. First off, the game actually has pretty good graphics. The render distance is great for a game of the time, and the character models actually look pretty detailed, with, well, maybe the exception of this kid. The game also has a fully functioning night and day cycle. It doesn't really affect the gameplay in any meaningful way, but it's kind of cool. The magic system is also pretty in-depth. You have the 4 elements, of course. You level up each one of these elements independently, unlocking a wide array of spells. The way you level these up is from experience in battle, as well as there are hidden spirits throughout the land where if you find one, it's an automatic 1 level in an element of your choice. Each element can go as high as 50, although it's almost impossible to max out all 4 in a single playthrough. And one of the things I actually really liked in this game as a kid is that I remember all of the enemies you fight use use the same magic spells that you do. So magic feels really consistent and real across the game, which is something that's not really common. Usually the enemies you fight will have their own list of spells that do their own things, but no, everybody fights with the exact same 4 elements and the exact same spells. I remember seeing these guys here actually throw rocks at me when I didn't have anything in the earth element, and I was like, whoa, that's cool, I can't wait to try that out. Unfortunately though, that's about where my praise for this game ends. So you leave the monastery, you get to this first town here. In town, you'll find a shop where the guy just straight up gives you a pair of magic wings. Wait, what? It doesn't cost money, you just gave me teleportation wings? Okay, well that's cool. This is probably still like the tutorial, the first area, so they're probably taking it really easy. I'm sure that'll change. It doesn't. There's no currency. There's no money in the game whatsoever. All items are given to you 100% for free. This is such a major part of most RPGs, and in here, it's just completely absent. Oh, you want to stay at an inn? Oh, I can see you're tired, buddy. Just go ahead and sleep. Don't worry about my overhead. It's free. It's on the house. In the first inn, you'll meet this character named Shannon, who is apparently on the exact same journey as you are, and you actually run into her in different inns along the way. She's not presented as that interesting of a character other than the fact that she's literally the only recurring character, so whether you want to like her or not, she's pretty much the only familiar face you're ever really going to see. Now you step outside the town and almost immediately you're going to be thrown into a battle and you get to actually experiment with the combat system, which is very unique and had a lot of great ideas, even though I don't feel like it really came together that well. So you fight in this giant octagon, almost like a wrestling match, and then you have your own little octagon around you, as do the enemies. And now you move around your own little octagon in the fight in real time, getting closer or further away from enemies, and they do the same thing. If you get up close to enemies, they'll get this really weird icon above their head, which is actually your staff, and it means you can whack them with your stick. If you don't want to do that, you can step back and you can also hit them with magic. You do get some cool attacks and stuff down the line, but the main spell for each element is pretty basic. You're using a wind attack, you send out this little blast of wind. Using fire, you shoot out a tiny little fireball. You're using earth element, you shoot at a rock. When you level these up, well, now you're shooting out a slightly bigger rock. Now you're shooting out a slightly bigger plume of fire. Honestly, most of the spells are very basic, especially the ones that you'll be using for the most part. And especially early on in the game, the most effective thing you can do is just walk up and whack the enemies. One of the worst things too is that it's really hard to aim a lot of these spells. Their trajectory can be totally wild, and especially if it's the first time you're using a spell, there's like a 50-50 chance that you're even going to hit the enemy. Oh, and the encounter rate is ridiculously high, but we'll talk more about that later. Oh, and another thing about the magic, as I mentioned, there's 4 elements, so you really have to pick 2 or 3 and focus on those, and you would think that would really lead to a bunch of different playstyles, a bunch of different strategies, but well, it doesn't. You have to use water because water is the only magical path that offers a healing spell, and you have to have a healing spell. You also have to go for earth because earth has the most powerful attack spells. No matter what, you have to pick those 2. Your weapon never changes. You never get another weapon in this game. You're stuck with that staff. Doesn't level up, doesn't change appearance, that's just all you got. Now, the damage that you deal to your enemies is determined by your stats. The way that you level them up, though, is really ass backwards. Want to raise your HP? Get hit in battle. Okay. Want to raise your defense? Hit the enemies with your staff. Want to raise your MP? Well, use your magic spells, but it only counts if they hit. Thankfully, healing damage does count at least. Want to raise your agility? Run around a lot. The easiest way to level up your agility is just tie down your thumbstick with like a rubber band or something and make him run in circles. You want to know what I did while I was power leveling Quest 64? The dishes. It was more interesting. There's also no inventory limit, by the way, so hoard all those items to your heart's content. Anyways, back to the plot. So you go down the road heading towards Dondoran City. On the way, you find out that a thief just robbed the castle. When you get there, you meet the king, who tells you that the thief actually stole something called the Earth Orb, which is the secret to the town's success, and without it, the town will fall into ruin or some crap. So he asks you to go and get it from the robber. Hey, he stole my orb. You want to get through my gate? Well, go get it for me. Fetch quest! You go into the Dark Forest to face off against the robber, and this is the first time I actually did any grinding. And you have to, because if you don't, the boss will mess you up. You beat this guy wearing the skin of a dead wolf, get the orb, return it to the king, and he gives it to you? So this thing that you need so the town can prosper, and if you don't have it, the town will fall into ruin. Yeah, let's give it to an 8-year-old kid. He probably needs it. And from this point onwards, you've pretty much seen everything the game has to offer, as sad as that is to say. The next town you go to is called Larapool, and I actually like the design of this town. After you run around for a bit, have to backtrack, yada yada yada, you fight the wind boss, you defeat him, you get the wind orb, and you get to keep it. And now, it's also worth mentioning that this is a lonely-ass game. The entire time you play this game, you are solo. There is no party that fills out. It's just you, an 8-year-old kid, running through the wilderness. Now, I have a strong suspicion that the devs might have actually intended for you to build a party as you go along, but it just never really came together. In the second town, you meet a princess who has a strangely detailed character model. She has an actual personality, unlike a lot of the characters, and she talks about how much she'd like to go with you. Then later on, you meet Leonardo, a guy who tells you he's searching for the alchemist's secret, which actually sounds really interesting. He also has a super cool character model. Are we talking side quests here? Let's do it. These characters are only seen 2, maybe 3 times throughout the entire adventure, and believe me, I searched every corner. The princess sends a letter to the queen of another city telling her to trust you. And Leonardo you see again in the final castle. He actually lets you save. Having characters like that following you in a party would have really helped lighten up the game and added a lot more depth. If they could use different attacks, different spells, it would have added a lot of variety. Now I'm sure maybe that was hard to implement with the current battle system, but it just feels like such a missed opportunity. How many classic RPGs can you think of where it's literally just one guy, a kid, and he just travels alone? There's not very many. I also think that maybe the character of Shannon was supposed to be a companion as well, which would have added a lot more depth and a lot more interactions, which would have made some things that happen later in the game maybe have a little bit more impact. Anyways, sometime around fighting the second boss where you get that wind orb, you're gonna unlock what is essentially the invincibility spell, and this pretty much breaks the entire game. Really, after you get this, you're done. You're ready to face the final boss. This spell makes you invulnerable to literally every single magic attack. You know how many enemies in the game do not fight with magic? 1. There's literally 1 enemy in the entire game that does not use magic as their primary attack. So if you keep your distance, you're safe from everything. And after you get this invincibility, you want to win any fight at all in the game, just use this Earth Avalanche spell. Ignore the fact that the game is running at 10 FPS whenever you use this, as well as the fact that where these rocks land is completely random. So you'll have some turns where you'll do like 20 hits on one character and some turns where you'll do 0. This spell will pretty much win any fight for you. Anyways, after you get the wind orb, you go back to the water city of Larapool, and the one who actually gave you the instructions to get the orb, Leela, she'll say that there's a character called Epona, not that Epona, and this character knows everything and wants to talk to you, so you have to go and see her. And this leads up to the very worst part of the entire game, the ice tunnel. This place is long as hell, littered with dead ends, confusing, and just so boring. Oh, and this maze portion right here that I'm showing, good luck. Have fun trying to find the right path, or a path to any of the spirits, or any of the chests, or a path that doesn't loop around on itself and send you right back to the beginning. And this section is where the incredibly high encounter rate really shines through. Finish a fight, walk 2 steps, do another fight. Run away or finish the fight, walk 2 steps. Would you look at that? Another fight. You'll get out of the tunnel eventually. You'll meet Epona, who just does another exposition drop over a dialogue box, and then she'll teleport you away to a pirate ship. And these black-hearted pirates will discover that you're a stowaway. Instead of throwing you overboard, they'll be like, hey, that's cool. Very soon you'll land on the shore, meet the water princess who asks you to get the water orb, and then you'll go and fight the water boss named Nepti. Pretty easy to win. I mean, if you know the invincibility spell, it's pretty hard not to. You'll get to keep the orb, you'll leave, teleport around, and end up back in the water city. The worst part here, though, is that there's no direction. No character tells you what to do next. You pretty much just have to wander around until you figure this part out. You're somehow supposed to guess that because you have both the wind and water jewel, if you go back to this other boat that you took like half a lifetime ago, it can now go to a new place and take you to a new area. They even changed Shannon's dialogue, which was previously talking about not being able to take a ship, to now talking about how great of a magician you are. Wouldn't it have been great if she said, wow, the ship is open now. Why don't you ride it, Brian? And this is where you actually get to what I think is the prettiest town in the game. You'll learn that a criminal named Fargo escaped from the prison here and stole the fire gem. Where have we heard this before? Anyways, in the end, you'll end up talking to the queen, who trusts you because the princess sent that letter that I mentioned earlier, and he'll give you this dialogue here. And this dialogue is very special. Everything wrong with the game can be pretty much summed up in this dialogue box. You're probably more interested in finding your father, but it doesn't matter. This dude Fargo's blocking the way. Also turns out he has the fire orb, which for some reason you need to progress. Everything's predictable, lined up for you, and you have absolutely no choice, no way to deviate, nothing you can do. This quest that you have is extremely conveniently lined up and poorly written. You'll go through another long-ass underground cave, and it's actually so overly long that I got turned around a few times. When you finish a fight, Brian will jump up into the air and then spin around to face the direction you were heading before you started the fight. This is supposed to help orient you in a specific direction. However, if you were running or if you're holding the joystick, the camera will just immediately whip around again. It can be really easy to get turned around, especially when areas look extremely similar. When you get near the end of this dungeon, you'll meet the first mini-boss, this chick named Shelf. She'll tell you she serves some great god named Mammon, and she wants your 3 stones. Wait, what? Who's Mammon? Who is she talking about? We're like 3/4 of the way through the game. Are they introducing like new enemies here? Like what's happening? Anyways, just turn invincible and drop some rocks on her. You'll exit out into this giant, not the Gerudo desert area. There's an extremely easy to miss secret area that explains a lot of the different plot and elements that you're coming across. But if you just go straight and continue along the main quest, you'll lose all of this info. I know I never visited this area on my first playthrough as a kid, that's for sure. So assuming you actually go there and find it, you meet a guy named Lavar who once had the L-Tail book and opened it. However, he was not able to control the powers within and unleashed literal hell on the world until Epona sealed it up. He tells you that only you can stop the evil force known as Mammon, the dude that Shilf was talking about. You'll reach this burned down town, and at the end, Shannon tells you that the king destroyed it to test out his power. Guess that means he's a dick. You'll go down the road some more, and you'll find yet another cave. This one's full of these little guys straight out of Princess Mononoke. At the very end, you'll finally catch up with Fargo, who reveals that the king sent him to collect all the orbs, but instead of handing them over, he's just gonna keep them for himself. Cast magic barrier, drop some rocks on him, take the orb. Now you'll exit the tunnel and you'll look upon the final town of the entire game. You don't even pretend to go back and return the fire orb. We're way past that now. After navigating your way through this terribly planned out town, you'll meet Shannon at the inn, who tells you that the king probably jailed your dad. And of course, as this game's incredibly linear and there's no other paths you can take, you have to go to the castle and find him. After going through yet another really boring dungeon crawl, you meet the king's right-hand man, some red goblin-looking dude named Guilty. There's even less explanation of who this character is or why they matter than usual, so just drop some rocks on him. And this is where you actually meet Leonardo again, who randomly confirms that your father, yes, has indeed been taken hostage. And shortly after this save point, you'll finally find your father, and he's been taken captive by Shannon. It's Shannon? Even as a kid, I found this twist really underwhelming. Now, if Shannon had been a party member like I talked about earlier, or if maybe, you know, her interactions with you had a little bit more depth, told you a little bit more about her character, if you actually felt like you were friends, I don't know, maybe this could have had some impact on you, kind of like the Sheik is Zelda plot twist, spoiler alert. But the character was just so paper thin that I felt nothing as a kid, and I feel even less now. This twist is just kind of like, alright. She tells you have no choice but to go onwards. You can talk to your father here, and that's about it. That's literally the only time in the game you can interact with your father. This one dialogue box. There's nothing else. The entire quest was to look for your father. Quest completed. The game's still going. Now after this, you'll enter the throne room and you'll meet the king. There's a big fight, but it'll go down the usual way. Cast magic barrier, drop some rocks. After you exit the hallway, you'll notice that, well, the music stopped. For the first time ever. Maybe the guy on the synthesizer fell asleep. On the roof, you'll meet Shannon again, who reveals herself to be a puppet of Mammon, all along manipulating you along this journey to bring you to this point. Her ultimate goal is to unleash the power of the book and the orbs and free Mammon, and so she gives you the book. Like, there's no fight. Nothing happens here. She's just like, I want to free my master. I need these tools to do it. You have many of them. Take this one piece that I have kept. I don't want it anymore. Oh, would you look at that? The music is back, and it's the worst track since the monastery at the very beginning of the game. Yay. Now, visually speaking, this final dungeon is really interesting looking. It's a real slog to actually work your way through, though, and it's kind of just there to pad out the end of the game. A lot of the rooms you enter are places that you've actually been in earlier in the game, but slightly changed. It actually kind of reminds me of like the ending of the first Kingdom Hearts game, where it has kind of the same thing. You'll go back through previous areas, except this one is done worse. You meet Epona somewhere along the way here, who actually lets you save. If only I could save. You'll meet Shannon again, who will reiterate everything that you already knew, and then she'll ask you, why are humans so strong with emotions and feelings? And she teleports you away. Now, her questioning like her identity and human identity and all that could have had a lot more impact again if she had ever been an actual character. Finally, you'll be at Mammon, who's pretty much the giant shadow monster that Sora fights at the very beginning of Kingdom Hearts. So maybe Kingdom Hearts ripped off Quest 64. Quest 64 might have stolen a lot from the Final Fantasy series, but it looks like Square repaid them the favor in the end. Mammon tells you that you have the power to free him thanks to having the book, gems, and possibly all the town teleportation wings. He insinuates something about that. Then he tries to kill you. Now guys, it's time to put everything that you've learned throughout playing this game into effect. It's time to use every strategy, every item to just really hit this as hard as you can to do the absolute best you can. After he's dead, Shannon reappears and said that she's surprised she didn't disappear with Mammon, and that somehow it must be your doing. She thanks you, and then says that she will travel the world and try and find her own humanity to understand what really makes people human. You then get a text over picture ending, talking about how the world is at peace, Mammon is dead, and the balance has been restored, yada yada yada. Then the credits roll. I'm serious, like, that's how this game ends. Want to know how long it took me to beat that game? 10.5 hours. That includes an hour and a half of grinding in the very first forest and 45 minutes of Brian running around in a circle with my joystick taped down. But at the end of the day, why is this game so bad? I think so much of it has to do with its wasted potential as well as all of the hype leading up to its release that it did not deliver on. It has a bare bones plot, terrible characters with zero character development who are only there to lead you along a preset road that you cannot divert from, and this was actually advertised as if it could compete with Final Fantasy VII. Now, if you combine that with the fact it's literally the only RPG you could get on the N64 at the time, and Nintendo was a brand that was well known for its great RPGs thanks to all of them on the Super Nintendo and the original NES, not even Nintendo Power was able to sell this game as a great RPG to play. Now, the game did come out in Japan. It was slightly different. Apparently, the gameplay has been tightened up slightly. Other than that, though, as far as I know, the Quest series has pretty much faded from existence. The worst part of this, though, is that when I was a kid, I actually kind of loved this game, or at least I loved the beginning. I remember stepping out of the very first town and just being like blown away by the way that everything looked, by like everything you could see in the distance. Like, I was just like entranced. At least until I worked my way through like the first few fights and maybe the first quest line, like got the first orb, and then I was just kind of like, is this the game? And found out that, yeah, it was. So, I guess we're done here?
Wait, Anakin.
What?
There is another.
Whoa, 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 what?
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
No, no, please, no, no!